Welcome to the Digital Remodeler Podcast. So glad you've chosen to join us today. And with me is Kyle Coon. And Kyle, it's great to have you with us today. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much, Carl, for having me on today. I'm excited to chat with you and your audience about value and communication and just improving it across the board.
Absolutely. So first of all, let's start with your story. You've got an incredible story and just a really amazing journey you've been on. And a lot of people may not know your story, your background. So give us kind of your biography, a little bit of your journey, and then we'll get into this topic of communication.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I actually I lost my sight when I was 6 years old due to a rare form of eye cancer called retinoblastoma, and I you know grew up kind of a sporty kid. I got into competitive rock climbing very early on in my childhood, and that morphed into a love and passion for adventure sports. And I eventually went on to, um, you know, get into endurance sports after college, and eventually made my way all the way to competing at the Tokyo and Paris Paralympic Games in 2021 and 2024. In the sport of triathlon specifically. So it's been quite the journey, but I've always been fascinated, and it's always just played such a big role in my life. That being communication, uh, because you know, look, I'm the biggest challenge that I have had in both my personal and professional life has been that I'm totally blind. And that comes with a lot of challenges. Some of those being like, I cannot see facial expressions. I can't, you know, see hand gestures, or sometimes even in the digital space, photos and video assets and all that kind of stuff. There are some certain challenges that arise there, and I always had this fascination with just, okay, well, my words and tone are much more valuable then. So I decided to study communication when I was in college, and then really, in the last 5 or 6 years, really pursued that to just a whole different level in trying to um, understand how we can be even better and more effective with our everyday communication, as well as our business communication, because again, that has played such a role in my personal and professional life.
Excellent. Yeah, so I want to kind of, dig into this a little bit because, you brought up something really important. Obviously, in your case, the ability to communicate becomes hypercritical.
Mhm.
But I think, even for somebody who is not in your position, so many people ignore the importance of their words, their
Mhm.
tone, the ability to communicate concepts and ideas. And so, one of the things that I would love to hear about is you said that there was kind of this turning point maybe 5 or 6 years ago where you almost sounds like you kind of doubled down a little bit into this concept of really becoming more of an expert and increasing your capabilities when it comes to communication. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Like, what was it that kind of took you down that path, and what was it that maybe inspired you that you needed to go deeper into this area?
For sure. I'm going to rewind a little bit, probably to about 10, maybe 11 years ago. I graduated from college in 2013, and I was I can confidently and unwaveringly say this now, that I was a very arrogant 21-year-old. I thought that I was the hottest thing in the world, and I was going to, take on the world. I was going to be the next, hot young entrepreneur, CEO, whatever have you. And I decided that I was going to apply for every job, CEO and above, and quickly realized that that did not work in the real world, and so started climbing my way down the corporate ladder, until I fell off the bottom rung, hit the ground, and started digging a hole. And I looked up a year later and kind of discovered that I was, jobless, deep in debt, and just not in a good, physical or mental space. And I think what happened, and that's kind of when I got into endurance sport. And so endurance sport kind of helped, get my physical and mental mind back on track. But then when I wanted to start working on elevating to the next level of sport, that took a whole new approach. There was only yes, I could continue training my body, to swim, bike, and run faster, uh, but that wasn't going to help me if I didn't know how to find the right people to coach me, to find the right people to train with. And then at the time, um, I was also writing and editing my first book, and I was wanting to, find a publisher and sell the book and all this stuff. And so I wanted to actually go down that path of just elevating myself to the next level. And so I was listening to a podcast on, on how to, market and sell your book or something along those lines. And I came across this guy. His name's Phil M. Jones, and uh, he had written this short little book called Exactly What to Say, and it was, this little book that had what he calls magic words and phrases in it. And the idea, he pointed out, was, communication is a lot simpler than we make it out to be. We can overcomplicate things really, really quickly, and the people that have the most success in life, when we stop and think about it, are really the ones who know exactly what to say, how to say it, and exactly when to make it count. And that really hit home with me. So I decided to basically pick up every audio program, watch every YouTube video, listen to every podcast, that that Phil had been on, that other communication experts were doing, um, because it again, it just rang so true. Like, every when I looked back through my life, every time that I was struggling, or when I launched myself to greater success, was at a time when someone said something in a moment, and it was the exact right thing to say in that moment. So I figured, if I could learn to do that, and do that in my own life, and then help other people do that, oh man, wouldn't the world be a much better place if we could just all communicate a little more clearly? So that was kind of how it started. And over the last 5-6 years, just immersed myself in these communication tactics and strategies, and just understanding what communication really is, and and what sales and marketing is, and how you know how we can communicate with each other more effectively and just get better at it. And so that's the journey I've gone down over the last 5 or 6 years, and it's allowed me to, now I give keynotes, I give, I run workshops, I work with groups of people, on just strategizing, their communication, and finding the right words, and finding the right questions to ask, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. So how has your understanding of communication evolved, over time? So when you look at communication now, how would you describe communication? How would you describe the fundamentals to somebody who's listening today?
Yeah. So I think one of the really big things to remember about communication is that it's a two-way street. So one of the things that we all forget all the time is that communication is meant to be a discussion. And are you familiar with? I'm guessing you and some of your listeners out there are familiar with like radio station or TV station frequencies, like like you hear a radio station ad goes like WJXL Jacksonville, Florida, or something like that.
Yes.
Um, well, we all have our own favorite radio station, and that's WIIFM, and it stands for "What's in it for me." And so this was a mistake that I made really, really early on in my professional life, is that I was just thinking of what's in it for me. And what that did was it put me on the opposite side of the table from, you know, the people that I was trying to get a job from, or the people that I was basically trying to impress. And we were two adversaries working against each other, or negotiating against each other. We were trying to win. We were not trying to win-win. We said we were, but we weren't, because we were only focused on, at least I was only focused on what's in it for me. So what I did was I shifted to a, what's in it for them or what's in it for you mentality, um, because what I, so through exactly what to say, we teach some cornerstones of conversational excellence, and one of the cornerstones that we teach is, people only do things for their reasons and not yours. And so one of the things that we have to do when we enter into any conversation is we have to be curious for long enough so that we reach a point of empathy. Because when we reach a point of empathy and we actually understand what the person across the table from us is going through, what their struggles are, what their perspective is, well, now all of a sudden we can shift over to their side of the table, and now we are two people working alongside of each other, not against each other. We're working alongside of each other to overcome a challenge, or find a solution. So I think for me, it was learning to be more curious so that I could ask better questions, to start conversations with people, and I could build those relationships, and those relationships would, allow me to reach a position of empathy, so that then the opportunities appeared, and then from those opportunities, I had the ability to take action.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think you've given us some real nuggets here. First of all, one of the things we obviously the topic here is creating value,
Hmm.
and value is determined by the recipient of the value, and you know, getting yourself onto the same side of the table as the other party is key to helping figure out where the value lies in their mind. And so kind of delve into that a little bit, and I you were starting into that with asking questions, and so
Mm,
let's talk about that. How do you craft better questions to unlock the value proposition in the mind of that prospect, and also to really build the bridge of trust between you and that individual?
yeah, love this question, because it really is about, you know so one of the ways that, so we first have to define, what empathy is, because that at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is, to gain understanding or to gain empathy. Basically what that means is to care about what the people that you care about care about. That sounds very complicated and very simple at the same time. So basically, we need to remain curious for long enough to get to that point. So, some questions that, we might ask. So let's we can use a contractor or remodeler, for example. We can, something we can ask is, what is your experience with, working with contractors in the past, or what do you understand about, um, the process of, of remodeling a kitchen or a home or a room entails. We can ask those types of questions, and we can find out what our client's vision is. So it's all about staying curious for long enough. So just asking, those questions, finding out what their motivations are. Like, why, like, what made you decide that, now's the time to remodel? Um, what what experiences have you had in the past? Have you had friends that have done it? Or, like, why are you deciding to remodel? Do you need to, are you looking to, uh, you know, achieve XYZ or TUV? Anything along those lines. So it's about just staying curious, so you find out what their motivations are.
Excellent. Now you said that a couple times, staying curious long enough. So here's a question for you. So, a lot of people are ADD. Boy, they just they're already thinking of the next question. How does somebody stay engaged long enough? How do you help somebody that they're already thinking of the next question, or they're thinking of their response to the answer they're being given? How would you give somebody some guidance to really mentally stay engaged with that prospect, really hear what they're saying so they can get to that point of empathy without always leaping ahead to the next item on the agenda, what their next response is going to be?
Yes, indeed. So it's one of my favorite things to do, and it's called listening. It's all we need to do. And when we take the letters of listen, there's an L, an I, an S, a T, an E, and an N. If we rearrange those, it becomes another word: silent. Coincidence?
Mm,
Absolutely. It just happens to make a remarkable point. Um, and so one of the things that we have to do is actually be interested in the other person's responses. And we can show interest in that person's responses by listening to them and making sure that we clarify and understand, what their answers are, repeat it back to them or summarize it. Uh, so, you know, so if we're sitting here and you gotta, you know, and you've asked a question, oh, what is your experience working with contractors in the past? And client says, oh, well, I don't have any experience. Um, you know, or they launch into a story of, oh, I had this one terrible experience of, working with, this guy. He, things were running late and this and that. If you tune out, you're going to miss a lot of valuable information during that exchange. So put the distractions away, lean in, focus on what they are saying, and you can encourage them to keep talking, keep feeding you information by just nodding along, saying, "Uh huh, really? Okay, tell me more." We're looking for, because at the end of the day, we as salespeople or service providers, it's in our name. We're looking to provide a service, uh, and quite often that service can just be listening and helping them solve that problem that they've called us in for.
excellent. So in that case, you bring up something good, and I like where you took us. Sometimes you're going to get into the pain points
Hmm.
And so let's kind of delve into that. So, they unlock some dissatisfaction, some of those bad experiences. How can using transparency and empathy help overcome some of those challenges and really help cement the trust in that relationship as you continue that communication process?
Oh boy, yeah. So I I like saying that if you tell the truth, you'll never forget what you said. um, so like just from the very beginning, just be open. Um, and sometimes we're afraid to talk about these tough issues or these sticking points or these pain points. And sometimes we just have, again, it goes back to asking the questions. It goes back to, because if we make a statement, we can shoot and miss. If we ask a question and we shoot and miss, we can just ask another question. But getting back to this idea of, you know pain points, or, for lack of a better term, objections, whether that be to pricing or another issue. One strategy that I've actually found and others have found is very effective is agree with them. So let's say, you've gotten to a point in, the selling process where you offer up a price, um, of your services, and you know the client says, "Oof, that's expensive," and you could just, instead of backpedaling and trying to figure out how to keep this client, you could just say, "I completely agree with you." Making a big, you know remodeling your bathroom or remodeling your house or your kitchen or anything like that. It's a big decision and a big investment. Hard to argue with someone that agrees with you, right?
Exactly. Good.
So yeah, so that's one, and then another strategy to tag along to that is, agree with them. I completely, I entirely agree with you. It's, making this kind of decision is it's a big decision, a big investment, and I apologize that if I wasn't clear. Would it help if if we broke down a couple of areas that might have you concerned? What would those areas be?
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Well, that brings us to kind of this section I wanted us to spend a little time on here,
Hmm.
because contractors often know the real value of their work. They know the quality they bring, but they struggle to express that value in a way that really connects with the customer.
Hmm.
And so, what are some ways that they can really communicate that value? And the reason I want to, kind of hone in on this is because if they don't, then they do end up in this, long drawn out pricing discussion. And then the pressure is they've got to justify price.
Hmm.
And so, if you can kind of speak into that, how can they really bring out and communicate the value that they bring to that customer?
Yes. So the if we have a marketplace, whether it's in, you know you know there are so many contractors out there. So how do you differentiate yourself? Um, how do you show your value? And I like to use this example of, of a pen. So we have a pen. Let's just chuck this pen on a table at a garage sale. Someone will probably pay what, 5 cents, 10 cents for the pen. Take that
Mhm.
same pen, put it on, stick it upright in a acrylic stand, next to a dozen or 2 dozen other pens, in the same acrylic stand next to other compartments of pens, in a mid-price department store. Call it a Macy's or something like that. Pen's probably a few bucks, a couple dollars, something like that. Now we take that pen, lay it down on its side, put it in a mahogany box that's velvet lined, stick that mahogany box in a glass cabinet that's spot lit. To get to the pen, you have to speak to a member of staff. That member of staff is wearing a black tuxedo, white gloves, and is named Pierre. How much is the pen now? The point is that the pen is the same pen, but everything around that pen, the communication, the presentation, the experience, the purpose, all of that. So everything that surrounds the pen is different. So how as service providers or contractors, can you differentiate yourself? Is it the experience that you bring? Is it the process that you bring? Is it your company's purpose? Or is it your price? And so figuring out which of those is your biggest thing, that's going to help you more than anything. Because if we can communicate that the experience that you have working with us is going to be bar none, well, that's going to be amazing. If we can if we can communicate that we have a purpose behind our business. We're locally, we're a local family contracting business. We only employ people that have grown up in this area. We've been in this we've been living here for the last 50 years, so on and so forth. That kind of purpose resonates with some people, but you don't know what resonates with your client until you get to know them, because everyone wants you to show me that you know me. We do business with people we know, like, and trust, but we also do, people want to know, have you done this before? Have you done it recently? And have you done it for someone like me? So it's a lot of answers to the one question. But when you boil it all down, it's being able to, again, show the client that you know them, their pain points, you are right there alongside them, trying to help them solve their problem.
So I want to take off where you were at, Kyle. So one of the things I think you brought up is the presentation and
Mm-hmm.
the consistency around the offer.
Mm-hmm.
And as a contractor, are you thinking about the consistency of what you're communicating? Are you communicating that value from the very first time that customer calls the office?
Mm-hmm.
From the first time they encounter your messaging online,
Mm-hmm.
your sales materials? Is there a consistent message that resonates with them? And so I want you to speak into that as well. So understanding who I am as the
Yep.
consumer,
Yep.
but then matching the message to what you've learned about me so that I feel like I'm understood. If you can speak to that.
Yeah. So, it's, look, at the end of the day, we all need to be true to ourselves. So, we want to make sure that we know the customer and that we're presenting a consistent message across all forms of communication. If whether you're presenting that consistent message, on your website, on your social media platforms, when someone, if someone calls the office, and online you say you're friendly, and then you pick up the phone, you're all grumpy get off my lawn guy. Well, it's that's mixed messaging. So we have to be consistent with that messaging. We have to actually be valuable in order to say that we're valuable. So it's not just a matter of making, of selling that we're valuable. It's actually being valuable. So being consistent with your messaging, with your tone, across every level, from owner, CEO, all the way down to anybody, the lowest, quote unquote, lowest rung on the totem pole. Um, Everyone has to be part of the team, and if you can build that consistency across the company, across the messaging, um, it's quite amazing what you can accomplish.
Absolutely. And let's, kind of move forward here a little bit.
Hmm.
The other problem area that often arises is unmet expectations.
Mm,
And so, in our communication, number one, how can we elicit the expectations that that customer has? And then how can we clarify those expectations, making sure that everybody's in agreement, so that we don't have, resentment and customer dissatisfaction at the end.
mm.
So that we have a good experience all the way through.
Well, I think, really establishing it right at the beginning, asking questions. Just, let's go back to some of those questions that we asked earlier, like what is your experience with, contractors? What do you understand about the process, that it takes, in sourcing materials and all that, all that. You can ask how, you know, when was the, how often would you like me to communicate, um, how often would you like to be, informed of decisions? Would you like to be, uh, informed of only key decisions? What constitutes a key decision for you? How important is, is being on this specific budget, to you, on a scale of 1 to 10? How important, is, getting this project done quickly, to you? So really establishing all of that very early on, and making sure that the client is the one actually outlining, what their expectations are, and you are the one then being able to clarify what the client expectations are, and you can let them know, hey, yes, I can meet those expectations, or, you know these expectations, that might be unrealistic, or it might not be, or we might not be the right fit for you. So it's all about making sure, asking questions isn't just a matter of making sure that you land the client, it's making sure that you want to work with them as well. So we can avoid a lot of unmet expectations just by being very clear very early on and setting those expectations. And again, asking questions, knowing, what the pain points are, what the importance of certain areas are for our client and customer, um, early on, and making sure that, again, we stick to that.
Excellent. And then, as we kind of wrap up here, what final piece of advice would you give to contractors on how to improve their communication and demonstrate value in every interaction that they're having?
Mm. So, a couple of pieces of advice. Um, I would say the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment you're saying it. I would, encourage everyone to be curious, because curiosity is the fuel for great conversations. And it's questions will lead you to conversations. Conversations will lead you to those relationships. Those relationships will build into opportunities. And, it's those opportunities that will lead you to the ability to take action. The third part of my one part piece of advice would be that the person that is in control of every conversation is the one that's asking the questions. And the final piece of advice that I would encourage everyone to remember is one that I mentioned earlier. It's people do things for their reasons, not yours. So if we keep all those in mind and we try to keep it stupid simple, do those simple things really, really well, and then do those simple things a little bit better, you're going to find that your communication across the board improves dramatically. And I have found it in my life, in my various business ventures, and I hope all of your listeners out there do so as well.
Fantastic. And Kyle, if somebody wants to learn more about you, connect with you, where can they go to do that?
For sure. So easiest way, if you want to just get a hold of me, just email me, kyle@kylecoon.com. That's my website, kylecoon.com. You can check me out. I'm also on all of the your major social media platforms. Instagram, I'm at Iron Kyle. That's EYERONKYLE. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Kyle, just you can search for me, Kyle Coon, linkedin.com/IN/Kyle Coon.
Fantastic. Kyle, thanks for being with us today. And to our audience, thank you for joining us, and hope to have you on another episode of the Digital Remodeler Podcast.